Having a career transition after being a firefighter for over 30 years, honoured to serve in the various positions that I held over that time, transitioning after really appreciating and respecting the other firefighters I served with. Having a career transition is not an easy process. When you start your career as a young, physically fit and generally psychologically unscarred firefighter, it was actually on Remembrance Day, the same day with Mount Canellan, it's not immediately apparent that one day your career may be cut short or change direction due to physical injury or illness. Although thinking back at some of the older firemen in the 1980s, their physical impediments, their aches and pains, and the internal battles they cope with, mostly alone, you just don't think about those types of things when you commence your operational career. And your family members, who have been very supportive of your career, they're accustomed to your working life on shift work. The family have their own routines when you're not around, but their routines get thrown into disarray when you're suddenly hanging around all of the time. I enjoyed my career from those early days in that line tamer's suit, gradually going through the ranks, starting as a fourth class fireman at the City of Sydney, known as headquarters back then the Botany Fire Station for a couple of years, then a few years at Hurstville, then 10 years at 90 Station Menai as a three-striper senior firefighter. I completed the SO's promotional program and was attached to Turvey Park Fire Station in Wagga Wagga for a couple of years, before returning to Sydney, serving at Cogra, Silverwater, and then back to my old stomping ground at Menai. There are a lot of great experiences working with different crews, leading teams, and serving the community, and having a lot of fun in the process. Over these 30 years, I attended a range of incidents, being exposed to the normal firefighter rigours and to a number of incidents which were more challenging and stressful. I also served as a volunteer member of the Peer Support Critical Incident Support Team and acted on a few occasions in positions of Wellbeing Coordinator and Operational Safety Coordinator. After an injury to my right shoulder, with subsequent operations to both shoulders, including ongoing rehabilitation, including a stint on alternative duties away from my permanent station officer position, I sustained another degenerative injury which occasioned my medical discharge. It also had taken a bit of a toll on my emotional state during this time. You discover that you just don't bounce back as you normally should or would. Your resilience dissipates and you feel like you're going through an emotional fog. In this period, I'd applied for promotion to the Record Inspector via the promotional program, being surprised and disappointed that I missed out progressing due to one criterion being lower than expected, and that was after being a peer supporter and wellbeing coordinator, it was emotional intelligence that was lower than it should have been. I was also unsuccessful for expression of interest support position, but in hindsight, I did not perform as well as I should have in my interview, not being able to recall essential criteria which I did know prior. Physical injuries had taken their toll, and accumulated critical incident stress, including vicarious exposure to a number of emergency incidents, also came to the surface during this time. It was interesting that Mark Coyne was here earlier, and in my youth I grew up in the St George area and loved rugby league, and one of my heroes was Lord Ted Goodwin, who played centre and fullback for St George. I played rugby league. My best game ever was in a grand final, under 16s on Jubilee Oval. Really enjoyed rugby league, but I was quite disappointed when Mr Coyne, playing for Queensland, scored that remarkable try for Queensland in the State of Origin. I haven't got over that yet. It's normal to have self-doubt during these times. In tough situations, we often get tough on ourselves, and we often suffer through these moments alone. We wonder why we feel so incompetent when it seems as though everyone else has their lives under control. Entering that liminal space of pending medical discharge for me, it's not as easy as one hopes for. Even though I'd kept contact with some trusted peer support colleagues, some of whom are here today, who provided helpful advice about looking after yourself, keeping healthy and active, reminding you to seek out your network of family and friends that you can go to for support, and they provided info about where to access help. I came to realise that despite all those around me, including my family, that I had to embrace that liminality on my own, that in-between, discomforting, inconvenient place, and engage it head-on. It was going to be a paradigm shift. And through that paradigm shift, you need to persevere. And in that process, I found there's a few false leads along that pathway. You want that yearning for certainty. You have an unhealthy curiosity of what the future may hold. And you may have a preoccupation with trying to find yourself. In regards to certainty, it was Albert Einstein who said, "Not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that can be measured matters." What does matter is that you need to take a leap of faith, because otherwise we reach out for certainties that will just keep eluding us. Taking that leap of faith is also about trust, about deciding to settle for answers to questions we scarcely dare ask, and whose answers we simply can't know for sure. Will I recover sufficiently to return to my SO's position? If not, will I find another job? Do I want another job? Is this it? Will I continue to have other physical issues? And why do I feel so anxious? You need to take a leap of faith. I know a little bit about faith, having got the little cross on the shoulders here, the epaulets, having Christian faith since my youth. And a good definition is, faith is not belief without proof, but is trust without reservation. Therefore, faith is more an act of courage than it is an act of knowledge. When going through any kind of transition, particularly a cloudy career transition, you need to have courage for a leap of faith concerning certainty and to maintain your confidence. I'm not a great orator like Catherine was this morning, but I do refer to the poet Alfred Tennyson, and the ancient sage sums it up when he writes, "Wherefore thou be wise, cleave ever to the sunnier side of doubt." That's what it feels like. And what will the future consist of? How do you start planning for the future? There's an old Jewish joke that says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Fire and Rescue's Health and Safety Branch did keep in touch with me during and post my medical discharge and helped me with my future plans though. They provided information about having my RPLs assessed to determine what my transferable skills were, my interests, and my capacity to undertake any future employment options. They looked at my lived experiences gained within the brigade and provided my service and training records. This information enabled me to eventually secure recognised qualifications and gave me that extra confidence that I needed to look more widely for what work opportunities I might want to pursue. The other thing I brought up is, should you consume yourself in this transition time, this cloudy time, in trying to find yourself? You can waste a lot of time trying to find yourself, especially if you're looking in the wrong place. Hugh Mackay, the Australian social commentator, says the problem arises when finding yourself becomes a preoccupation, perhaps even a reason for living or for being, as through self-knowledge will of itself open a magic door to a satisfying, fulfilling life, with a new occupation or within early retirement. And we also know that so much of the self is hidden from conscious view that we're never likely to uncover it. The truth is less grand than that. For most of us, finding ourselves is incidental to the process of living, maturing, and moving on. You just got to take that leap of faith. And moving on, do we take the first opportunity that comes along? Will that be a permanent or a temporary opportunity, or just a dead end? There's a tendency you want to move on to the next chapter quickly, to jump into that next phase. But unlike firefighting, there's no standard operational guideline written just yet for career transitions. In risk management, there's a saying, the early bird gets the worm. But it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. Take time. One of the most helpful strategies during a transitional period is to focus on your physical fitness. For me, it was going out at lunchtimes, walking down to Mrs. Macquarie's chair and back when I was on alternative duties. And also spending time doing gym sessions at the Sydney Fire Station under guidance from Richo, from the Health and Fitness branch. Taking time also provides you with that unexpected opportunity to look back over your career, where you may need some psychological assistance, some headspace reformatting, so to speak, of those jobs you attended, the good, the bad and the ugly, to help you gain those new perspectives. In times like these, it's important to slow down. Recognise that any self-doubt you experience is neither an unchangeable truth nor something you should ignore. Like me, you may need assistance from professionals and guidance via your GP. How we spend our time is how we spend our lives. Take time. Periods of laziness, listening to music, having a few beers with a mate, having coffee, or just having a good chat, walking the dog. They're all factors that contribute to a person's sense of well-being. Have a criteria for making sound decisions. I've had one that I used for quite a while, and during this transition time, I came back to it all the time. 6 simple steps I just to keep repeating through my mind. And they were think ahead, take advice, suss out your own motives, suss out other people's motives, and use the time you got. You've got to think ahead. What's going to happen next? Take advice. Go to your friends and families. Your motives. What are my motives? Why do I want to do this for? Suss out other people's motives. Why do they want me to do this? Is this just part of their program, their strategies, or do they really care and really know what they're talking about? And use the time you got wisely. If you need to make a decision, use that time. If you need to make a decision like that, say no. You can cope with the status quo. I had to keep coming back to that all the time, and it was very helpful. Walking around the beaches at Cronulla helped me with my well-being. After moving on from fire and rescue, only a few weeks later after discharge, I took up a role and kept active by drawing an early morning school bus for a couple of hours a week. The first morning pickup was at Cronulla, and I arrived early, spending 20 to 30 minutes walking around the Esplanade to give me a regular and healthy routine. This kept me occupied and gave me space to think and settle into a post-fire brigade mode. And it can be helpful to remember that, firstly, everyone deals with things differently. Instead of beating yourself up over your feelings of stress, offer yourself a bit of compassion. Give yourself some credit. You're doing the best you can with the tools at hand. And secondly, stress is not 100% bad. It can be a signal that you're growing, gaining fresh insights, and learning new things about yourselves and our world. Stress can result from working at the edge of our abilities. Like a vigorous workout, this can cause strain and discomfort, but ultimately it makes us stronger and healthier. Also, it's essential to recognise when the discomfort you experience is aligned with your values. If it is, then the associated stress is growth-orientated and life-giving. And although it may not be the most comfortable experience, you can move forward with the knowledge that the stress has value to you. One of the concerns that stressed me was potentially going back on shift with doubts in my own physical capabilities, which could lead to the possible consequences letting down my team members and placing them in danger. I didn't want to do that, and I had a lot of doubts of my abilities to perform, to meet those firefighter essential functions. And although it is hard to, you should learn to embrace the negative. Don't always look on the bright side of life. We know that depression rates are higher in countries that place a premium on happiness. In regards to happiness, rather than being the byproduct of a life well lived, feeling happy has become a goal in itself. The pursuit of happiness at the expense of other emotions may, paradoxically, be making us sad. In fact, one common ingredient in well-being often results from unhappiness, and that's meaning. Meaning is very important. Well-being is the presence of the positive, not just the absence of the negative. Well-being is meaning and purpose and connection. It is not solely the absence of anxiety and depression. Meaning isn't about feeling great necessarily all of the time. For me, this time of reflection, embracing the negatives and the positives, and resultant growth is where you become psychologically free. It enabled me to move on 6 months after leading fire rescue. Despite still having some health issues, I landed in a workplace health and safety role which aligned with my vocational skills and newly acquired qualifications. Only a person who risks is free. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but having new eyes. It is a matter of perspective, how we perceive our world and our role within it. Or as G.K. Chesterton rightly observed, an adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered. Much depends on how we perceive life, as a threat or an opportunity. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. When we embrace that liminality, that in-between discomforting place, yes, it's just an inconvenience, and engage it head-on, we discover the truest sense of adventure. So have the courage to be. You need a bit of courage to hang in there. What you can hang on to, with a leap of faith, is love. How good is it love is patient and kind. I am most thankful that my transition to vocational redeployment was assisted not only by the support of my former peers, staff from within my local zone and from within the health and safety, but mostly from my loving wife Debbie and my family who gave me space and time to adjust. Being alone can make you feel vulnerable. Being alone can make it difficult to put danger and fear into perspective. Without the presence of others to balance our perspectives, to strengthen our resolve, and to share our risks, living courageously can feel like a daunting task. Having an engineering perspective will help you consider the pessimist's view of a half-empty glass. The glass is actually twice as big as it needs to be. If the glass, get a half-sized glass, your contents are almost overflowing. How good's that? No one ever runs on 100%, we're all about the 80%. So just get a smaller glass. Take each day, issue or problem, and step back and just reconsider. It's here we can find meaning and purpose and connection. According to psychologist Carol Dweck, success in life is all about how you deal with failure. She describes the approach to failure of people with a growth mindset this way. Failure is information. We label it failure, but it's more like, this didn't work, and I'm a problem solver, so I'll try something else. So how do you develop a growth mindset? Well, first, don't stay helpless. Reject rejection. People with a growth mindset don't feel helpless because they know that in order to be successful, you need to be willing to fail hard and then bounce right back. View failure as temporary, and view each failure as an isolated incident. Be passionate. There's always going to be someone who's more naturally talented and healthier than you are, but what you lack in talent or well-being, you can make up for in passion. Take action. Take action turns all your worry, concern about failure into a positive, focused energy. Focus on your strengths. Have realistic expectations. Remember that the perfect is the enemy of the good. And go the extra mile. Be flexible, vary your approaches, don't complain when things don't go your way, look for opportunities in everything, be courageous. I also like to add, have a sense of humour. I won't mention it in my dad jokes. Albert Einstein said, defeat strips away false values and makes you realise what you really want. Become a new way of being you. I've moved on from this position and commenced a new consulting role in work health safety, having just completed working for the past 2 weeks at the Invictus Games. 6 months ago, I also commenced a voluntary position as a chaplain in New South Wales Ambulance. The skills acquired as a fire and rescue peer, including the RPL qualifications obtained while going through my career transition, pastoral experience in church work, and the opportunity to serve again for Ambulance New South Wales was rekindled. I'm bouncing back. Serving others through volunteering is a good thing to do, as we heard earlier. Hugh Mackay suggests that the key to a good life is to acknowledge that our essential nature is social, not individual. And there's a paradox at the heart of the good life. We are at our best when we're striving to give others the very things we ourselves most desire. That's respect, recognition, kindness, and even happiness. And we are at our worst when we criticise others' very frailties and shortcomings we ourselves possess. In other words, to devote ourselves to the happiness and well-being of others is likely to enhance our own sense of well-being and fulfilment. Have a dose of humility. It involves shifting your primary focus from your own well-being to the well-being of others. Modesty is a natural partner of humility. And that's why I would like to acknowledge the accomplishment of Station Officer Mark Dobson, who has just been successful in obtaining a Winston Churchill Fellowship with a focus on the veterans' reintegration through volunteering with his involvement with Team Rubicon. I'm finding adjusting to the new normal is a challenge, but the solution is the struggle. The solution is the struggle. I'm backing my new strength and skills and hanging in there with a bit of courage. You too can be courageous and not just be the unconquered, as was one of the slogans at the Invictus Games, but you can be more than conquerors. So let's change how we think about change. With a bit of time, courage, having a growth mindset, and most of all, be surprised by love. Thank you.